So thank you everyone for joining today. Um, my name's Cynthia and I'm an information specialist with UHN Library and Information Services. Today I'm going to be teaching the basics of searching PubMed. Joining me today, Raluca is our workshop coordinator and she'll be posting links into the chat. Amelia will be monitoring the chat and either answering the questions you have or bringing it to my attention at the very end. Before we start, I would like to begin with the land acknowledgement. The land on which the University Health Network operates is the traditional territory of the Huron-Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, and the Mississaugas of the Credit River. This territory is the subject of the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Haudenosaunee Confederacy and the Confederacy of the Ojibwe and Allied Nations to peaceably care and share for the resources around the Great Lakes. Today, Toronto is still the home to many Indigenous and Métis people from across Turtle Island, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to work and learn on this land. In addition to respectfully acknowledging the land and its first peoples, we want to recognize that hospital libraries can legitimize certain kinds of knowledge through the books and resources we make available in our collections. Historically, libraries have privileged Eurocentric materials and ignored or excluded Indigenous knowledges. UHN Libraries is committed to providing a collection that supports Team UHN's efforts in working towards reconciliation. As you think about and develop your research, even if you're not working primarily with Indigenous populations, we encourage you to explore and learn from Indigenous methodologies and Indigenous-led research. We have a few resources in our collection on the slide, but you can also read more by scanning the QR code. We're also here to support your learning and your research, so feel free to reach out to myself or any other library staff about these resources. So now we're going to go into the session. Firstly, what is PubMed? So PubMed stands for Public Medline. So it's really the way for the general public to access the Medline database. Medline is the major North American medical database. So it's North American focused and it's also medicine focused. So if your research topic has more to do with nursing or allied health, or you need more international coverage, then PubMed is probably not the only place you want to look at, but it is a great place to start for a lot of topics. The database is also designed for the general public, so it's really simple to do a basic search where you put in just a few terms and find your answers quickly. It does become a little bit more difficult to do a very complex or comprehensive search or something that's needs to be reproducible for a project like a systematic review. Our session is really going to be mainly a demo, so we're hoping at the end you will know how to kind of build an effective search strategy using PubMed, be able to select and manage your search results, use advanced search to search specific fields, use clinical queries to get targeted results, and also troubleshoot your searches in PubMed. Whenever we teach about searching, we often talk about concept boxes as a tool to kind of break down your question into searchable concepts. But when we're searching in PubMed, a lot of the times it probably isn't something that you need to use, especially if it's going to be a basic search. But it might be useful for a topic that's complex, or if you're trying to be comprehensive, or if you're doing some troubleshooting because PubMed is doing something weird with what you're typing in. To use concept boxes, you're going to write out your question. For example, in patients at risk for pulmonary embolism, is heparin or warfarin a more effective treatment? And from that question, you're kind of going to pick out what the main concepts are that have to show up in your articles to be able to answer that research question. So in this case, it's going to be pulmonary embolism, second one's warfarin, and the third one's heparin. And then we can also use this to kind of brainstorm other words that you might search. For example, pulmonary thromboembolism and also the brand names of warfarin. And then depending on how kind of comprehensive you want to be, you might spend a little bit of time kind of thinking about other search terms. But for now, we're just gonna kind of keep this in our back pocket. We're gonna revisit it a bit later when we're troubleshooting. Okay. So now I'm gonna start with the demo. PubMed, it is publicly available. Sorry, I'm just gonna turn off my camera for a bit. Okay, so it is publicly available. So you could just kind of go to the PubMed website from Google. But what I would recommend is accessing it through our library website. Our library website is UHNLibraries.ca, or if you're on site, you can also access it as the first tab from the corporate intranet. This link, the great part about it is that um, it basically helps you find the full text, and that kind of saves you a bit of time instead of like looking for your articles and then copying and pasting the titles into our search bar to see if we have it. Um, I'll show you a bit later in one of the articles. So I'm going to start with showing the difference between like a basic search and a more comprehensive search in PubMed. So I'm going to search for quality of life. We get a lot of articles here. And I'm going to compare it with a more comprehensive search. We get a few more articles. We get a bit more articles because we're being a lot more comprehensive here. The great part about PubMed is that it does a little bit of the searching for you. So I searched quality of life, but it also added a mesh term. This is the medical subject heading, so it's basically controlled vocabulary. So it's like tags or labels to really capture a concept. So if the article is about quality of life, it's going to have this tag, quality of life, onto it. So you kind of make sure that you're capturing everything. And then this is kind of like a more comprehensive search. We're getting more articles because we're thinking about like happiness or patient preference, which wouldn't be captured if you just search quality of life. For the focus of our workshop, we're really going to be actually focusing on the basic search rather than the more comprehensive search. If you need kind of more support in doing a comprehensive search like this, you can contact your information specialist and they can help you. So now we're going to do another basic search. So we're going to look for Haldol for delirium after cardiac surgery. So we're getting 29 results. One way to kind of, like if you feel like you're not getting enough results or you feel like there should be more, you could try switching the words with another synonym. For example, you might try, instead of cardiac, you're going to replace it with heart. And that gives another set. Or you can try cardiovascular as well. So sometimes you might want to kind of like play around with these different search queries to see if you're getting different results. Because sometimes they could mean the same thing or very similar things, but PubMed doesn't know that. So it could give you different results that way. Another thing I want to show you is how to kind of narrow down your results. So I'm gonna just delete this part just so that I have a bigger set of results. So 83 results is not too bad to skim through, but in another search it could be more, or I could be really busy and I don't know where to start. What I recommend is applying some limits or filters. So one of them is the date filter. So you could do it like the most recent one, so like the last 10 years or so. There's also kind of publication by last 1 year, 5, 10 years. Text availability, article type is a very useful one as well, because you might want to start with like systematic reviews, for example. They did change the interface just this week. So it might look a bit different from what you did from PubMed last week. Basically, before you had to kind of like add your search filters first, and then you have to check on it. Now you can just click here and apply whichever filter you want to use. So, for example, we might be interested in systematic reviews and also adult. We get a much smaller set of results, and you can also always kind of uncheck it or click clear all. Another kind of basic search that I want to show is the clinical queries. So back to the PubMed homepage, it's right under Find Clinical Queries. And this one, it basically adds on filters that limit your results to the kinds of studies that will likely answer the type of question you have. So, for example, I'm interested in patient-controlled analgesia post-operative. It's likely a therapy question, and also you can adjust the scope from broad to narrow. I'm going to start with broad just to see how many results I get. So it gives the first 5 here, but you can also look at all of them. So this is over 8,000. If I change it to narrow, then you get a much smaller set of results. So the difference between broad versus narrow is that broad basically makes sure that you're not missing anything, while narrow would reduce the number of studies that you have to look through. And also, like when you're looking at all the results, this is a lot, but again, like the filters are still here. So you can kind of like adjust it to like the most recent recent studies. You can also kind of sort it differently. So you can do best match, which is kind of like a relevancy ranking, or if you want the most recent articles as well. Another thing is that like a lot of when people are searching, people kind of talk about Boolean operators like and or. But PubMed, it kind of assumes an and between concepts. So for example, if I search vitamin C and common cold, we get 368 results. If I added an and there, same result. So you don't really need to include that and because it kind of assumes that. But sometimes I find that PubMed doesn't work very well. So I'm going to show you how to kind of troubleshoot it for a quick search and also when you're doing a more comprehensive search. So let's say I'm looking, actually, let me go back to here. Here, I just want to show how kind of PubMed translated it. It did pick up that vitamin C is one concept and also common cold is another concept. But sometimes it doesn't work very well, especially if the search concepts tend to be 2 words. So for example, I'm looking for procedural memory and dementia. And looking at the set of results, there's many more results than what I'm expecting. If I kind of skim through it, I'm finding something weird here. So methods is being searched, and which is why it's in bold. Whenever you try to kind of like troubleshoot or like figure out what PubMed is doing, I would click the advanced search and it would show you what PubMed's trying to do. So it's searching it as kind of like free concepts. So procedural, memory, and dementia. Because procedure, they're thinking of methods, and we're probably getting so many articles because like a lot of the abstracts will have a method section. So one of the quick ways to fix it is that you can put quotations around the problem concept. So that gives 65 results, and I can tell that these are much more relevant than the articles before. The only problem with this is that once you're putting quotations here, it actually prevents PubMed from translating whatever's in the quotations. So if you look at our advanced search, it's searching procedural memory in all fields, and that's it. It doesn't kind of translate it with a mesh term or anything else. Dementia is not in quotations, so it works fine. I would say this is like a really quick fix if you're really only looking for a few articles, or if there's not many other search terms. I would probably try searching other words just in case, because if there's even like a word in between procedural and memory, it's not going to be picked up. So I might search stuff like implicit learning, dementia, just to see, just to make sure like I'm not missing anything important. Okay, so this one was a simple fix. I think it's fine if you're doing a really quick search. You don't really need to be comprehensive, but sometimes you do want to be a bit more comprehensive. So I'm gonna search rejection among patients developing cytomegalovirus infection after kidney transplantation. So we're getting 310 results. Let's go to advanced search just to kind of figure out what PubMed's trying to do. We also see a warning here because PubMed sees among and it's a stop word, so it's actually not searching it. It's just telling us that it's kind of ignoring that word, which is fine because I don't think that's a very important term. And it's also searching it as kind of like 5 different concepts. We probably don't need the patients, and we probably don't need developing. So my tip usually is kind of keep it simple. Just search what your concepts are. So I would probably just need the graft rejection, cytomegalovirus infection, and kidney transplantation. If we look at kind of what PubMed is doing here, so we get for rejection, we get reject, rejected, which is fine. But we also get rejection psychology, which is not what we're looking for, and also psychology and rejection here. So this one, PubMed isn't translating it well. Cytomegalovirus, I would say this is pretty good, and kidney transplant is fine as well. So since PubMed does a pretty good job at translating the last two, I'm actually going to just keep it in my search. I'm not going to break it down anymore. So I'm going to search cytomegalovirus infection and kidney transplantation. And what we're going to do now is kind of just fix this part, the rejection part. So right now, I don't really want to do the quotations, just because for this time, I actually want to be a little bit more comprehensive. I want to have that mesh term added. So in order to add mesh terms, you just have to kind of scroll all the way to the bottom. And then at the bottom, there's a link to mesh. And this one, you can kind of just search whatever your keywords are. And it will show you kind of like based on the relevancy, what possible mesh terms could be. So they had the rejection psychology one as the first one, so which probably explains why PubMed thought that would be the right mesh term. Second one is graft rejection. And the great part about kind of like looking at the mesh is that you get a definition here about what PubMed, like what the subject heading means, and also kind of some search terms if you're interested in making a more comprehensive search. So let's say I want to add this subject heading. So all you have to do is go under here, under related information, and then click on PubMed, and it will just search it into PubMed for you. But now I'm only getting graph rejection. So what I have to do is kind of combine the previous two concepts with this one. So in order to do that, you're just going to go to Actions, Add Query, and then go to the other one, and we're going to combine it with AND because these are the free concepts that we want. We want cytomegalovirus infection, kidney transplantation, and graft rejection. I could kind of like expand this out a bit with like more search terms, but I'm just going to keep it simple just to illustrate how to combine the searches. Okay, so now we have 1,214, so that's a bit more than the 300 we got. Part of it is probably because we removed the patients part and we removed developing, but also we've added a mesh term to make it to capture some other articles that might not specifically just say rejection. And then the last thing I want to show you is the search fields in advanced search. So whenever you kind of just type it in the toolbar, it automatically goes to all fields, but you can actually kind of specify which search field you want to search. I think one of the most like common ones might be offer. So we can kind of search, say, Brian Hodges. And this will look for articles that are offered by Brian Hodges. If I just did this without specifying the offer field, we get the same results, but that's because PubMed recognizes that it's a name. And it also, it basically translated to an offer search for us. But for some names, PubMed doesn't really know it's an offer, so that's where you might want to use the offer search field. Another thing that I find kind of interesting is that, let me go to results, is that PubMed doesn't, like before 2002, full offer names were not included in PubMed citations. So that's kind of why it stopped at 2002 here. But I know that Brian Hodges has articles before 2002. So how PubMed stored the data for offers was that it just used the last name and the first initial. So if I search Hodges B, that's how I get the earlier articles here. So I'm going to look at 2001. But the only problem now is that you're only specifying the first initial. So it could be like Ben Hodges or Bradley Hodges. So you have to kind of go into the articles just to double check that it is Brian Hodges or it's the same offer that you're thinking of. I know the first two, just based on the topics, is probably not him, but this one looks like it could be because it's about education. And then this one, it's this one, it has the affiliation and has the email, so you can kind of confirm that way. But if it didn't, another way to do it is just look at the full text. And then if you use that library link, whenever we have the full text, it will have a Find It at UHN button. So you can just click that, and then it will access the full text for you. And then the very last thing is that I'm just going to show you how to kind of save your citations. So you could kind of check a few things or kind of leave it blank and save the whole page or save the whole selection. You can choose to save, email, or send to. If you click save, you can toggle through the selections and also how much information you want to save. Email, similar idea. Send to is a bit more useful, I would say. One thing is that you can just send it to the clipboard. So this one, it's kind of like a temporary storage. So it only lasts for 8 hours. So by the end of the day, it's going to disappear. Oops. If you needed to kind of keep it for longer term, you might want to send it to your collections. So you'll need to make an account for this, but you can kind of like create your own collection and it will save into your account indefinitely. You can also kind of like edit it, delete the collections. You can also share it. So you can make the collection public and share a link to it. Another choice is sending it to a citation manager. So that saves it as a file that you can import to your reference manager. And that's all the things I wanted to show about PubMed today. That is going to be all the content we have for the presentation, but we're going to have a few minutes to kind of go over any questions or if you wanted to troubleshoot anything.